Not every morning begins with sunlight and clarity. Some begin with a glowing screen, endless noise, and a mind that forgets itself before the day even starts. But what if one small change could give you back your peace, your focus, and your life? Chapter 1. The Habit He Never Questioned. Arjun's mornings did not begin with intention. They began with instinct. Before his eyes fully opened, his hand would reach blindly beside his pillow, searching for the familiar shape of his phone. The moment his fingers touched it, the day had already started, not by his choice, but by habit. The screen lit up his face in the dim morning light, pulling him instantly into a world that never slept. Notifications waited for him, like a crowd demanding attention. Messages, updates, headlines, endless scrolling content, all competing for his focus before he even sat up. What started as a quick check slowly stretched into minutes, and those minutes quietly stole the calm his mornings once held. His mind, still half asleep, was suddenly filled with noise, opinions, comparisons, and information he never asked for. He didn't notice how heavy it made him feel. The subtle tension in his chest, the rush in his thoughts, the quiet anxiety that followed him through the day, all of it seemed normal. Everyone around him lived the same way. Friends, colleagues, even strangers on the street walked with their eyes fixed on glowing screens. It felt like this was simply how mornings were meant to be. Days passed in a blur. He rushed through breakfast, carried a restless mind into work, and often felt tired before the day truly began. There was always a sense that something was missing, but he couldn't quite name it. His mornings had become crowded, but strangely empty at the same time. And yet he never questioned it. Not once did he stop to ask why the first moments of his day belonged to a device instead of himself. It was automatic, effortless, and invisible, like breathing. Until one quiet morning when everything changed. Not because he tried to change it, but because he had no choice. That morning, his phone didn't wake up with him. Chapter 2. The Uncomfortable Silence. Arjun sat up slowly, his hand instinctively reaching for the phone that wasn't there. For a moment, confusion filled his face. He tapped the screen, pressed the button, tried again. Nothing. The battery had died overnight. The silence that followed felt unfamiliar, almost unsettling. He looked around his room as if seeing it for the first time. The faint golden light of early morning slipped through the curtains, gently touching the walls. Dust particles floated lazily in the air, glowing in the sunlight. Outside, a bird called out, its sound clear and uninterrupted. There were no notifications, no vibrations, no sudden bursts of information demanding his attention. At first, it made him restless. His mind searched for something to hold on to, something to distract it. He felt the urge to get up and find a charger immediately, to bring back the noise he was so used to. But for some reason, he paused. He let the moment stay. The silence wasn't empty. It was simply quiet. And that quiet began to reveal things he had been missing. The steady rhythm of his own breathing, the softness of the morning air against his skin, the calm that existed before the world rushed in. It felt strange, almost uncomfortable, because he wasn't used to being alone with his thoughts. Minutes passed slowly, yet gently. The urgency he usually felt in the morning wasn't there. There was no pressure to respond, no need to compare, no flood of information pulling him in different directions. Just a stillness that asked nothing from him. For the first time in a long while, Arjun wasn't reacting. He was simply being, and somewhere within that quiet moment, a small realization began to form. Maybe the noise he had grown used to wasn't necessary. Maybe the peace he felt right now wasn't something new, but something he had been missing all along. He didn't fully understand it yet, but he felt it, and that feeling stayed with him longer than any notification ever had. Chapter 3. A Small Experiment. The next morning, Arjun woke up before his alarm, the memory of yesterday's quiet still lingering in his mind. His phone lay beside him, fully charged, waiting like it always had. For a moment, his hand moved toward it out of habit, but he stopped midway. There was a brief pause, a silent decision forming. Just 10 minutes, he told himself. 10 minutes without it. He sat up slowly and placed both feet on the floor. The room felt calmer than usual, as if it were inviting him to stay present a little longer. Instead of unlocking his phone, he stretched his arms, rolled his shoulders, and took a deep breath. It felt awkward at first, like he was breaking a routine that had been part of him for years. He walked to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. The simple act felt different, more intentional. He noticed the coolness of the glass in his hand, the way the water moved, the quiet sound it made as he drank. There were no distractions, no split attention. Just one moment, fully experienced. Curious, he stepped outside. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of earth and morning dew. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink, slowly brightening as the sun rose. He stood there doing nothing, yet feeling more alive than he had in many mornings before. Time didn't feel rushed, it felt open. Those 10 minutes passed gently, almost unnoticed. When he finally picked up his phone, something had shifted. The urge to scroll mindlessly wasn't as strong. It felt less like a necessity, and more like a choice. The next day, he tried it again. 10 minutes turned into 15, then 20. Some mornings he simply sat in silence. Other days he walked, stretched, or just watched the world wake up around him. Each day, the habit loosened its grip, and something else quietly took its place. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. There were no sudden breakthroughs or perfect routines, just small, consistent moments where he chose presence over distraction. And in those moments, he began to rediscover something he hadn't realized he had lost. His mornings were no longer something to rush through. They were something to experience, and slowly, they started to feel like they belonged to him again. Chapter 4. The Change Within. At first, the changes were so subtle that Arjun almost missed them. There was no dramatic moment, no sudden transformation that announced itself. But as days turned into weeks, something within him began to shift, quietly and steadily. His mornings no longer felt rushed or chaotic. Instead of waking up to noise and urgency, he woke up to space. Space to think, to breathe, to exist without immediately reacting to the world. That small window of time he had created each morning began to influence everything that followed. He noticed it in his thoughts first. They were no longer scattered or heavy the moment he woke up. There was a clarity that stayed with him, allowing him to focus on what truly mattered. Tasks that once felt overwhelming became manageable. Decisions felt easier. His mind was no longer crowded with unnecessary distractions. Then came the change in his mood. The quiet irritation he once carried through the day began to fade. He felt lighter, calmer, more patient. Situations that would have frustrated him before no longer had the same effect. It wasn't that his life had become easier, but he had become stronger in the way he handled it. He also began to notice how differently he approached his time. Instead of reacting to notifications and demands, he started setting small intentions for his day. Sometimes it was as simple as completing a task with full focus, or staying calm in a difficult moment. These intentions gave his day direction, something his old routine had never offered. There were mornings when the old habit tried to return. The urge to grab his phone was still there, whispering to him, and sometimes he gave in. But even on those days, he was aware. He could feel the difference immediately. The rush, the noise, the loss of calm. That awareness itself became his guide, gently pulling him back to the practice he was building. What surprised him the most was how this small change in the morning began to shape his entire life. His conversations became more present. His work became more focused. His evenings felt less draining. It was as if he had taken back control over something he didn't even realize he had given away. Arjun finally understood that mornings were not just a beginning. They were a foundation, and by protecting that foundation, he was building a life that felt more intentional, more peaceful, and more his own. Chapter 5. A New Beginning Every Day. One quiet morning, weeks after he had begun his small experiment, Arjun woke up before the alarm again. The room was still, wrapped in the soft light of dawn. His phone lay beside him, just as it always had, but this time it didn't call to him. There was no urgency, no pull, no automatic reach. For the first time, the silence felt natural. He sat up slowly and took a deep breath. The air felt fresh, almost like a new beginning waiting to be noticed. Outside, the world was waking up in its own rhythm. Birds sang gently. The sky shifted from deep blue to shades of gold, and the first light touched the earth with quiet grace. Arjun simply watched, fully present, without the need to capture it or share it. After some time, he picked up his phone, not out of habit but by choice. He looked at it, then smiled, and placed it back down. It no longer controlled the start of his day. It had become what it was always meant to be, just a tool, not a master. He stepped outside, feeling the ground beneath his feet, the cool morning breeze brushing against his skin. There was a sense of calm within him that didn't depend on anything external. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was steady and real. He realized that nothing about his life had drastically changed. The same work, the same responsibilities, the same world around him, but the way he began his day had changed everything. Mornings were no longer rushed moments to get through. They had become a sacred space, a time to reconnect with himself before the world asked anything of him. In that space, he found clarity, peace, and a quiet strength that stayed with him throughout the day. As the sun rose higher, Arjun understood something simple yet powerful. Every morning is an opportunity, not just to wake up, but to begin again, to choose calm over chaos, presence over distraction, intention over habit. And as he stood there, watching the light spread across the sky, he realized that the greatest change hadn't been in his routine, but in himself, because when you start your day without your phone, you don't lose anything. You gain your time, your focus, your peace, and most importantly, your life. And every sunrise becomes a reminder that you can always start again, on your own terms. The truth is simple. The way you start your morning decides the direction of your life. If you begin with noise, your day follows with chaos. But if you begin with silence, you create space for clarity, focus, and peace. You don't need a perfect routine. You just need one small decision tomorrow morning. Don't reach for your phone. Give yourself 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes of stillness, of breathing, of being present. Watch how it changes the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you live. If this message spoke to you, start tomorrow. No excuses, no delays. And when you do, come back and tell me how it changed your day. Because your life doesn't change overnight. It changes every morning you choose yourself first.